Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and today I'm going to look into as Wikipedia says, the killing of Jason Corbett, which I find it kind of interesting because they don't say murder, they say killing. And so I'm going to get to why are they saying that, and are they correctly saying that? And I want to welcome everybody who is here. I want to first say that this is an open live, and this is something I do only on occasion. Usually my lives are for patrons only. And let me just give you my little plug here right away. Patron only, it's $5 a month, and there are 2 lives a week. Case show like this on the weekend, and during the week I have a hangout. And my patrons can come to those and be a part of the live show. If you don't want to do that, you don't want to join Patreon, it's okay. All of my shows go public. I have nothing hidden. There's no little. The treat is being able to come to the live shows and support the channel. But all my videos are open to the public. So please do subscribe to the channel and click the bell. Check my playlist to see if there's tons of other cases that you might be interested in. And also, if you have one case in particular, go to the search engine at YouTube and put in Profiler Pat Brown and the name of the case and see if I've already done it. If I haven't, you can always send me an email or put it in, the messages or whatever. Hey, can you do this show? And eventually I might do it. I get so many in, sometimes it takes me a long time to get to them, but it also depends what attracts me and what I think I can actually say something about. So that is that. And I want to say this before I start the show. Those who know me know how I run these shows. I am not a storyteller. So if you're here to hear the story, you're on the wrong channel. I'm going to recommend one of the documentaries to you, like the new one out on Netflix, which that's why everybody's interested in this case right now. And there, of course, there are many YouTubers who do just the story, and they'll take you through the story. My purpose here is education. So I will give you the basics of the story, but I'm going to stop and talk about different aspects of what happened. I'm going to talk about psychology. I'm going to talk about personality disorders. I'm going to talk about the evidence. I'm going to talk about a lot of things. And the other thing I want to say before I get going is I'm going to say some things in the beginning that I know some people are going to be like, oh, how can you say that? Well, stick with me, because it's all going to mean something when I get to the point of where I'm going to give you my analysis of the actual crime, what I actually think happened, what went down. I don't think my personal point of view, I don't think is in any of the documentaries, and what I think the motive is. So hang in and understand that I'm trying to set up a lot of different issues so that you can see how it all comes together when the murder goes down. So that's that. And I do want to welcome everybody who is here in the chat room. I'm not going to say hello to all the new people coming in, but I'm glad you're here. One more thing, please be polite. Please be polite and nice, and don't go off on big tangents, because it gets to the point where people feel unwelcome and it gets unpleasant. So please just control yourselves. Please fasten your seatbelts. Well, you could do that too. All right. Let me start with, first, let me tell you where I got my information from, because one of the things that often happens is people don't get enough information through their documentaries or through Wikipedia, which I'm going to use as my little outline. I always use it because I'm lazy to write my own. So I do deeper research, and I don't do as much as if I were writing a book or analyzing, I've been hired to work on the case, but I do it. I want to do enough to understand what the heck is going on. And in this case, I watched 3 documentaries, and I will show which ones they are. 2 of them you don't need Netflix for, but let me find it. Don't tell me I've lost it already. Serious. Where's my thing? Hold on a second. Now, the other thing you all have to know about me is I forever forget to link something. Oh, here it is. Is this it? I can't. There we go. Sorry. the little pictures are so small that you cannot hardly see what the picture is. I'm using StreamYard, and that's the way it is. Okay. But I do lose pictures all the time. So a lot of patience is required to watch my shows. All right. This is the popular one out right now. And it's on Netflix. It's called A Deadly American Marriage. And it's a couple hours long, as opposed to these two documentaries, one by 48 hours and one by 2020. I'll link all of them. I think they're already linked below. These are linked below. You have to have Netflix to watch that. These are shorter. And this has, how do I want to say this? A more quality in a way and more information. And these two are very anti-Molly, who was involved in the death of her husband. Okay. And this one is a little bit kinder toward Molly. And I don't run into your opinions already on Molly. I'm going to go through a whole bunch of things about her, but that's just the way I saw these. But here was my problem. I watched all three of these, and I felt like I still didn't have enough information. I'm trying to analyze this as a profiler, and these huge things are missing. Now, I'm assuming that eventually I will understand those things, right? But for me, they're missing, and I need more information. And if I were investigating this case, working as a profiler in this case, I would be able to get all that information. But when you watch documentaries, they are famous for editing the living crap out of whatever they're doing. They have agendas. They have things they want to do with it. Like, for example, they want to have you wondering who's guilty and who's not guilty. And then they bring this person on and they just give you so much information about them, or they're speaking, they're doing an interview, and then they go to a different person and you go, I think they did it. No, I think they did it. Oh, I think they're guilty. Maybe they're not guilty. They do that in order to keep you on the edge of your seat. But it also screws up trying to understand the whole case. And so I found I was missing information in order to be able to make an actual determination of what I thought happened in the marriage and at the crime scene. But I believe I understand it now. And what helped me were these two books. After I watched those things, Molly's ex-fiance wrote this little book. And in it, he talks about Molly prior to this incident, shall we say. But he wrote it before this incident ever happened. And so he didn't write it after the incident to cash in on, hey, I was her fiance. This was before anything happened. And he used a pseudonym. He was actually talking about his life and things he was dealing with. But you get a really interesting picture of Molly through this. And that was very helpful. Then the other book here, My Brother Jason, is written by Molly's sister-in-law and Jason's sister. And her name is Tracy Corbett Lynch. And she despises Molly. And in the three documentaries, I was not that happy about her. She made me question things, not in her direction, not by what she was saying, but I was finding her like, I don't know if I believe you. I don't know if you're manipulating. I don't know if this and that. So she came off not useful, in my opinion, to understanding what really was going on. I didn't trust her. And that was all three documentaries. And then I read her book. And now we could be friends. So I see where she's coming from because of this book. And it gave me the information that I needed along with this book. So just want to let you know that when you're watching documentaries, a lot of times you're being manipulated by the documentary maker. So you just don't know what's really true and what is not true. For example, they might just throw out something. Oh, she said this at this time. And then you're like, well, who said she said that? And under what circumstance did she say that? You just don't know. So you either accept it and go, oh, that means she's or whatever. Or you go, what is that? And you just ignore it. It gets very confusing. But I think I can help you understand all of this now. So let's get into the story. All right. Oh, Carla has got that. Good point. And this is why I like doing lives, because I like your questions. Carla says, but are memoirs trustworthy? Don't people generally only present the facts that suit their own narrative? Absolutely. I have read some of the most untrustworthy narratives. And but as a profile, I usually catch that the fact that they're lying like dogs. I'm like, man, this person's a psychopath. Everything in here is a lie. I mean, and I can see where it's benefiting them. Now, that doesn't mean when I read the sisters' book that I thought every single thing in there was hands down the truth and the only truth. I definitely knew it was coming from her perspective, but there were enough things in there that helped me understand stuff that I needed to know, even if I didn't agree or think all of it was exactly accurate. So yeah, but that's a good point. You have to be careful with books just as well. So always be a little skeptical about everything. Oh, you didn't. I didn't warm to Jason's sister. Jason's sister is a very angry woman, and does she have a good reason to be angry or not? The one thing she does do, and I'll start out, since I'm going to start out probably with this whole issue, she does paint Jason as an angel. And somebody pointed out, which I thought was really kind of cool, somebody in one of the comments, that people often will, once person has died, that person becomes an angel. Like when Pat Brown is no longer here, you all remember nothing bad about me. I'll be the perfect woman, the perfect profile, the perfect everything. You'll forget about those other things I did, those other moments in life, which I really don't want you to remember. But that's what happens a lot of times. We look back and we have a much more fantasy version of the loved one than before they die. And we also we don't want, one of the things his sister doesn't want is, she's like, I'm here to save his reputation. He's been destroyed. The things that Molly has said about him have been so destructive and horrible. I'm here to protect my brother. So that's what she's doing. Does it mean that her brother was as much of an angel as she says? Probably not, but that's the way it comes across. Oh, that's very nice of you, Christine. Hi. Pat just makes it all come together. She gives the analysis and detailed. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, you have to hang in, though. Okay, let me get to this. All right. The first little bit here. So in case you've never heard of this case before and you haven't done your homework. And if you haven't done your homework, you can always stop this video. Well, this is the live part, but if you're viewing it later, stop the video and just go to one of the links and watch the basic story and then come back. Okay. But I'll tell you what happened anyway. But still, if you want to see everybody in action here, because I don't do video clips in that because I have so much trouble with YouTube demonetizing me on just about everything that I don't show crime scene photos and I don't do clips because I don't want to get nailed with copyright infringement. So anyway, Jason Corbett, this guy here, was an Irishman who was killed at his home in North Carolina in 2015. Investigations later revealed that his death was the result of a physical assault by his wife and his father-in-law. So, and this is fact. So he was killed in his home by according to the investigation, by his wife and her father, his father-in-law. He definitely ended up dead. They bludgeoned him. And I say they, I keep that in mind. I'm going to talk about something kind of interesting later, but basically here is Jason, and the two objects that were used in blunt force trauma was this paving thing, paver. I don't know what you call these things. I don't do gardening and I don't do outside work. This big heavy rock and a baseball bat, a metal baseball bat. These are the two things that were used in the killing of Jason Corbett. Okay. So keep that in mind. The circumstances of Corbett's death were the subject of a widespread media coverage in Ireland. So, because he was from Ireland, and his wife and father-in-law were found guilty of second-degree murder in 2017. However, their convictions were later reversed by the North Carolina Court of Appeals. And this is where a lot of people get very upset because they got second-degree murder charges, and they were in prison. And then the North Carolina Court of Appeals heard their appeal and reversed it. And they were going to go for a new trial. They were allowed to have a new trial because of things that were claimed that were done improperly. And there were a couple of things. It was technicalities for the most part, but the technicalities could have changed the jury's decision. After accepting, then they accepted a plea bargain instead to reduce charges. So in other words, and the whole thing about why a plea bargain was even offered was interesting. I think it was because the prosecution felt that if they brought in certain things that the jury might just find them not guilty. And on the other hand, that they were worried, Molly and her dad, Tom, were worried that they could still get nailed with this, go second degree at least, and stay in prison the rest of their lives. So they took a plea bargain and they were out in 2024. So they're both released from prison, which pisses off his sister very much. And now the two children, who are pretty much grown up, are also pissed off. So that's the basic beginning. Oh, thank you, Sarah. You're so kind. Weapons of opportunity. Well, they weren't very fancy. I mean, but they were, things that were around the house or in the garden. And of course, one of the things you'll find out as I go through this is that big heavy object, the paver or brick or what do you want to call it, cement thing, was on the nightstand, which people are like, do you always keep that on a nightstand? That's a kind of weird, you usually have a book there, your phone, but you don't usually have a big, huge cement object, So that's always a little weird. Thank you so much. You love my content. I appreciate that very, very much. And this case is fascinating to me. And I never do cases I don't find interest in. I just don't. I mean, if I can't analyze it and bring something new to the table, what's the point? I mean, there's so many storytellers out there. I'll leave it to them. But this one does have something, and I think my analysis of the crime is going to interest people because I don't think it's actually been brought out the way I'm going to bring it out. All right. So now, what happened with this fella, Jason Corbett? All right, the Jason Corbett guy had a very unfortunate thing going on with him. Let me find it here. I'm looking at my little pictures now, so do forgive me when I can't find anything. Live shows are amusing that way. All right. So anyway, here he is. He married his first wife. Jason Corbett originally lived in Limerick, Ireland, with his first wife, Margaret, and her nickname is Mags Fitzpatrick. And they got married, and they had two children, Jack and Sarah. And in November of 2006, a few months after their daughter was born, Mags died unexpectedly after suffering an asthma attack. Mag's sister, Catherine, was present at the Corbett house that night when she fell ill, helped Jason carry her to the car before he rushed off to seek medical attention. And he was on like halfway there with meeting the ambulance, and she died. Now, you will find out later. I'm going to just knock this whole theory down right away. There is a theory that he killed his first wife. That's the defense theory. That is what Molly says. He killed his first wife because she's claiming later on, which I will get to. I'm going to do just kind of three parts of this show. First is before they got married, then the marriage era point, and then the murder. She was claiming during the marriage era that he was very controlling, and he was into it's like strangulation, choking during sex, and things like that. So that maybe he killed his first wife doing that exact thing. And her autopsy report is pretty vague, so they were able to jump on that and get a couple, friends. You can always get a medical examiner that you pay, and he'll say, yeah, that autopsy kind of sucked, So she could have been murdered. I'm going to say right here, I see no evidence of that. Zero, none. I'm just going to chuck that out the window. I believe his wife died of an asthma attack. All right. Because the sister was there, she in the time when she was having the attack, she had her inhaler, it wasn't working. She told her sister, I think I'm going to die. She didn't say, My husband just choked me. My husband's smothering me. And she was in the vehicle with her husband. She was still alert and awake. And if he was the one killing her, I don't think she'd be jumping into the vehicle with him. So I just don't find that. I looked at it because you got to look at things like this. One thing you have to do when you do any kind of analysis is you got to take your emotions out of it and not just go, oh my God, he must have killed his first wife. He could have, so I had to look at it. But I don't find any evidence that that is true, especially since the sister was there and especially since Mags got in the vehicle with her own husband to go to try to get to the hospital, get to the emergency room, or get to the ambulance on way. And she just didn't make it. Very, very sad thing for Jason. Now, after she died, I just want to point out this because it shows his state of mind. He wrote these things. He left them. I think he left them on her grave. Hi, baby girl. I miss you more and more in each day. I miss you more and more as each day passes. And so does Jack and Sarah. She got her first tooth the other day, and she's being really good. And then he wrote this. I won't be around for a couple of days, so enjoy this champagne and flowers. I guess he put that on her grave. You will always be the love of my life and the girl of my dreams. You stole my heart on 6/9/97 when we held hands walking to Sean's shop. And God shattered it along with our hopes and dreams when he took you from us. He was broken. I will say I think he clearly loved his wife. And she was gone, and his whole life was just. Now, the next thing he did, I think, was a huge error, a really, really big mistake. And you're going to say, well, getting her in his life. Okay, that's not my point. Okay, one of the things about the angel effect that this other person had written on Reddit or YouTube or wherever, that his sister only sees that perfect side of him. He made a bad choice and continued to make the bad choice. And I think it's because he put his own feelings and needs above his children. And I think that was very unfortunate. And I tell people this all the time. I'm not trying to blame the victim in these cases, but I'm trying to warn people, especially people who they have children and they bring new boyfriends and girlfriends into their lives. Boyfriends kill more women's children, I think, than anybody else. You know what I mean? Because they get this new boyfriend, they bring him in after they've known him for like 3 months. He moves in because he doesn't have a place to live. And then they leave that boyfriend while they go shopping. And the baby starts crying and screaming, and the boyfriend's like, oh, you're so annoying. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, I'm kind of dead. So because he doesn't have that feeling and affection. So it's not a safe thing to bring in anybody into your children's lives. So I always warn everybody, be extraordinarily careful. Take a long time before you bring anybody into their lives at all. If you're going to date, keep the dating out of your children's lives until you know they're a keeper. And then you can start working to something else, because the children, I will say this over and over, the children are they're your duty. You brought them into the world. You better take care of them. And when you put your needs above their needs, you are failing to take care of them properly. And I do think Jason failed in that way. Now, why do I say that? All right, he went online. I think it was online. I'm not actually sure where the heck he put this up. Jason Corbett, recently widowed father looking for an au pair. Starting ASAP. 2 children, the 3.5-year-old and the 18-month-old. They're very young children, and he says Limerick Island. View profile. I don't know where this was put up. Molly, who answered the ad, had a story to other people that she went to an agency and all this crap, but apparently that is not exactly true. She answered his ad, and he accepted her as his au pair, or what you might call nanny. I'm going to stop here just because I want to ask, this is why I like doing a live show. I want to ask you, what is wrong with doing this? Please, somebody come right away and say, what do you see as the issue here? Because I like to bring people in so you can profile. He shouldn't have written that he's recently widowed. Interesting, Felicity. Well, that certainly puts him out there as a possible future partner, doesn't it? Yes, it does. But but it is the truth, so I'm not sure it's terribly wrong. Bow, very good, awake, not woke. He didn't vet her. Exactly. She did not have qualifications. And I'll get into what her past is with her fiance's book. She did not have qualifications. She loved children. The fiance does say she loved working with children. Absolutely. And she'd done a little bit of, I guess, sort of nanny-ish work, but nothing that I think was documentable, because I don't hear that she had a resume or whatever. So no, I don't think he vetted her properly. He doesn't know her. Good point. And he's leaving his kids alone with her. Oh my God, how can he vet her? Well, if you going through an agency, perhaps, where you have people who actually had this person know this person, and you could get to, vet her at least to the point where you have some clue. But apparently not so much. Here's an interesting point. Frida says she's too good looking to be warmly welcomed into a home with a wife. Oh my God, I love that answer. Yes. If he had a wife, if Mags was around, do you think Mags would say, we're both working, so why don't you bring this hottie in? She's not bad looking, so come on now, folks. She's not bad looking. Sometimes people when they don't like somebody, have to say they're ugly and that girl's attractive, okay? Mags would go, I'm not so sure. But if Mags were alive, she would not be alone with a husband so much. Mags would go to work, husband would go to work, she'd come over during the day for a period of time. So my own daughter did this, because when my granddaughter was born, was now 11, I did help. My daughter was home for 4 months, and then I helped watch her for a while, and so did her, my daughter's father-in-law, because he lives in their house, not my husband, but her husband's father. He lives over there with them. I live next door. And so I would go over and watch her, and then he'd come in and he'd take her and watch her for a while. We kind of shared that till both of us got exhausted. And we're like, okay, we've done this as long as we can take it. Get a nanny. We'll still help out. But so she did have young women come in. And I don't think she chose them only because they weren't good looking. I think they're perfectly fine looking. But they came over during the day where she was working, and her husband was away at work. So the nanny never really spent a lot of time with hubby, So she wasn't any kind of threat. So depends whether the nanny is live-in or somebody comes and goes. But that's a very good point. Julia says, when I was an au pair, no one wanted to work for single dads, and many of them did marry au pairs. Okay. Yes. Now, I also had an au pair in my life. I had an au pair when my kids were like 6 and 8, something like that. It was a girl. She was French. She was a student, and she came over and she wanted this, a chance to live in the United States and do this kind of thing. So she came and lived with us. But here's one of the points I'm going to make in just a minute. I was in the home. I was not working. I was a homeschooling mom. She was there to help me do, all kinds of different little things in the home, or watch the kids while I ran to the store, play with the kids a little bit, give me a break, because I was homeschooling, so I was with the kids all the time. She gave me a break. But what I want to point out, she was in the home, but the mother was in the home as well. And that's two different things. When he brought her into the home, there was no mother there. And this to me is a huge, big, fat issue. And I've been watching, I don't know how I got onto it, but it's on Prime Video. But anyway, I've been watching The Nanny. It's funny that this comes up at this time, but I'm on the last season, season 6. This is The Nanny. If you don't know this whole show, anyway, her name in the show is Fran Fine, and she gets kicked out of the bridal shop because she was had a fiance, and he dumped her for some other woman. So she tries to sell some cosmetics uptown, and she goes to a fancy home, and she ends up becoming the nanny. And here she is falling in love with her boss, and the boss is falling in love with her, right? Because guess what? He's a widower, right? So he doesn't have a wife in the home. If he had a wife in the home, I don't think Fran was going to get a job there. But his wife wasn't in the home. And his kids, he had 3 children, and they're school-age children. So none of these children are old enough to know, number one, that Fran Fine, their new nanny, is not their mother. Okay, this is a super important thing in this case. She's not their mother. However, problems still do occur because since she and her boss fall in love, but they're trying to hold off, like, okay, he's not supposed to have sex with the help. Although his sister says they had sex on the first night she showed up. She says that's not true, but it did happen quite quickly. Well, you think? This 30-year-old man brings a 24-year-old woman into his house 24/7. What do you think's going to happen? What do you think she thinks is going to happen? He wants her, she wants him. Hey, that's an equal thing, so don't blame just her, even though I'm going to get into her issues. But he brings in a 24-year-old woman. He should know better. He should know better. You don't bring in a young woman into your home that you're going to be sexually attracted to, because men are pretty much probably going to be sexually attracted to her. You know what I mean? So same thing happens in the nanny series. He's attracted to her. Boss is attracted to her. And they try to hold off. They hold off for like 5 freaking years, and nobody believes that. But hey, it's fiction. But meanwhile, one of the things that happens is that the children grow to love Fran. They know she's not their mother, but she is living in the house 24/7. She's not coming and going. She's living there and taking the place of the mother who has passed away. So she is becoming a mother to them. And let's say she's there for 5 years. This is one of the saddest things about this. She's there for 5 years. And boss decides, I'm really not in love with you because you are the help. So I just found this beautiful woman of my own class. I'm going to marry her. And she doesn't want you in the house anymore, Fran Fine. Bye-bye. And he kicks Fran Fine out of the house. And what happens then? Fran Fine, who has grown to love the children almost as her own, loses her 3 children overnight. The 3 children who've grown to love Fran Fine as their mother lose her overnight. It's cruel. It's absolutely cruel. And if people don't understand this, they're like, oh, well, they weren't her kids. Yes, but she was there with them. When he brought her into the house, it's even worse, because when he brought them in, look how old they were. They were little teeny children, 1.5 and 3 years old at the time. They couldn't remember their biological mother. She rolls in. She's not coming and going. She's not 60, 70 years old. So she's a grandma type. So that as a grandma type, they might not relate to her as a mommy, but as a grandma, and he could call her grandma nanny or whatever he wants to call it. And the family would call her grandma nanny, and she would know they would grow up knowing that's not their mother, but their grandma. But you bring a woman in this age, you install her, and let me tell you, if those two don't look like they could be mother and daughter biologically, you're wrong, because I'll show you another picture. Look at the eyes. See the eyes on them? They both have the same color eyes. You would have no clue they weren't biologically related. And the boy looks like his daddy. So it's like a family would have. The boy looks more like dad. The girl looks more like mom. So these children, when she rolls in, she's there 24/7. She's there to wake them up in the morning. She's there to put them to bed. She's there when they cry to run into their bedrooms. She's at the dinner table. She is effectively taking the place of a mother. And they're so young, they have no clue that she's not their mother. And as time goes on, they get into a relationship. Now they've hooked up, they're having sex. He's fallen in love with her. She's supposedly fallen in love with him. Now they're creating a new family. And a year goes by, they're still a family. Another year goes by, they're still a family. Another year goes by when he asked her to marry him. They were there for 3 years together. Those children see her as mommy. she sees them as her children. And by the time the murder occurred, or what some people call manslaughter, or some people call self-defense, depending on which way you want to look at it, the incident where he was killed, she had raised these children for 7 years. So I don't care if you don't like her, or she might be. Well, I'm going to get into issues about her, okay? But she raised these kids for 7 years from the time they were very little. She was their mother. And people don't want to admit this. They're like, oh, well, she's just doing this. How can she just steal somebody else's kids? He brought her in to be their mother. And if you put a person in your house, you install them 24 hours a day and they live there raise your kids, you're making them their mother. And when you go on and marry her, she's their mother. So there's a lot of people who, I guess, who have never adopted or done foster care, but I have. I have 3 children, and one of my children, my daughter was 7 years old and my son was 5 years old when my husband and I brought a foster child who was 5 years old, so 6 years younger than my other son. We called them the Brown brothers because they were like almost the same age. And people would say, oh, they're twins. And I was like 6 weeks apart. And people were like, how'd you do that? But he became our foster child at 5 years old. Now, he wasn't intended to be a foster child, mind you. We were going to adopt him, but he was coming out of a state that required us to have him as a foster child for an entire year before we could file the adoption papers. And I told the social worker that the little boy is not coming into our house until you terminate all parental rights. Now, why did I say that? Because when you bring a child into your home, as a parent, that's what I think he should have done. You have to understand that if you're going to be their parent, you're going to be their parent. You can't take that away from them or send them away. It's just, the cruelty of it is unbelievable. So I said, look, I'm not taking this little boy into my house and having him believe he's got a home for the next, he's finally got a home, mommy, daddy, brother, and sister. And 9 months down the road, the bio mother turns up and says, oh, I decided I want to get him back. And you come and rip him out of my house. You're going to rip that out of my heart, because by then he's my son. And he's the brother of my other 2 children. So you're suddenly somebody coming in there and kidnapping their brother, ripping him out of their lives. That's just sick. It's sick. And on top of it, for my son, who was supposed to be my son, suddenly they say, oh, never mind. That's not really your mom and dad and your brother and sister. No, we're just going to take you away and toss you someplace else where a person who hasn't been around for 5 freaking years. I said, I won't do that. I will not do that to that child, because that child and my children who are already there have a right to feel safe. And so they terminated the parental rights, and my new son came up to us. A year later, we adopted him. He's now 42 years old. And he is my son. And for anybody who has the gall to say, oh, well, he's not really your son because he was somebody else's son at one time. Yeah, I have a lot of strong feelings about that, because that is ridiculous. And so when she came into their lives and took the place of mother and raised them 24/7 for the next 7 years, she was their mother. They called her mommy. They thought she was mommy. It doesn't matter whether she was always a good mommy or whether she was a psychologically disturbed mommy. That's a whole other issue I'm going to get into. But she was their mother without the legal papers, which is a big issue in this case. And so I just want to say that first. So I don't think he should have brought her into the house, because he did not know who she was. He brought in an unknown woman he didn't vet around his children 24/7 and made her their new mother. I don't think that was wise. And I think he was paying attention to his own needs rather than his children's. I think that was a mistake he made. I'm going to check your comments. I'm going to go to what happened right before they got married, which I've learned about. Oh, so many comments now. Hold on a second. Okay, don't go to her father yet. We'll get to that in a minute. All he saw was a pretty face, and I don't think it was just that. I think people are foolish. Okay, I just want you to understand that people don't think properly, which is why I try to say, don't do these things. So a girl who, I say, a woman who's lonely, she's got a couple kids and she's lonely, and she meets this guy and he says, oh, you're beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And she lets him move into the house within a month. And then he uses her credit card and sexually assaults her daughter, and you're like, why did you let the guy in your house? Well, I was lonely. That's what happens. Yes, she can be very charming. There's no question about it. There were a lot of things about her personality which could be likable. But that is not necessarily why you want to have somebody move into your life. That's for sure. Okay. This is a double problem, Christoph. Jason didn't like her adopting the children. Lack of trust, a red flag for me. Okay, let me just go right to that. So he's hooked up with her and he's having issues with her. This is what I learned from the sister's book and from the fiance's book. The fiance's book says that she had mental health problems. She had been to a psychiatric institution. She was on God knows how many medications. They said she was bipolar. They said they gave her all kinds of names. She had issues, and he had struggled with her, the fiance, and she got pregnant supposedly, and then miscarried, and that really messed her up. And then she said she found this guy, and she says, "Oh, I'm going to Ireland. Bye." And he's like, "What?" But anyway, she showed mental health problems and personality disorder when she was with the fiance before she got to Jason. When she was with Jason, the sister documents this in the book, and I looked to see whether this was just a sister making up a bunch of crap, because during the documentaries, the sister did not really say there was a problem prior to the marriage and the moving from Ireland to the US. And I was like, that's weird, because you would think somebody would have seen something in 3 years. He would have seen something in 3 years. Was this a perfect, everything was perfect for 3 years? They got engaged, they rolled over to the US, but he got a house, they got married, and then everything went to hell? This doesn't usually work this way. And so I question this, but I believe now the documentary probably edited things to make it the way they want to make it. So I'm reading the sister's book. They had issues with her from the day she arrived. They questioned her about her behaviors through the next 3 years. And it was believable. And also he was having issues with her. And there's emails and texts that prove that he was like having a lot of trouble with her. She would complain about everything. And then finally she went back to the US, and she's like, oh, I think he wrote this. And I think this is an interesting statement between the two of them. Let me see if I can find it. Maybe this is it. Maybe. Oh, the wrong one. Okay, that's not it. How about here? Oh, no, that's not it. God, where'd it go? Okay, I did lose it. Okay. He was having issues with her. And one of the things he was saying to her was that, I'm not sure I'm ready to, I don't know, we should continue this relationship because I don't want to hurt the children if it falls apart. Okay? But he was saying this after he already brought her into the home and made her the mother to his children. So he's a little late saying that. That's what you should have thought of before you brought her over. But now he's saying, he's seeing issues with her. So he's like, well, I don't want to get fully involved to the point where then my kids' hearts get broken when you leave. He's right about that, but he's late. So anyway, she says in return, well, I don't want to be involved with a guy. I don't want to get hooked. I don't want to love the children and you and just to be dumped. And that's what I just pointed out before. What do you do when you watch somebody's kids for 5 years and one day they just kick you out the door like you're nothing to them? And you lose those children out of your lives, and those children lose you. So both sides are right about that. He's right that he doesn't want the kids to get attached to her if it's not going to work out. She's right that she doesn't want to get attached to the children if it's not going to work out. Both were correct. But he encouraged her to come back. She came back. And they continued on with her in the house. At one point, he said, why don't you get work outside of the house? In other words, keep that distance. But she didn't do it. But did he stop? Did he keep in the relationship? He did. He continued in the relationship in spite of all the things he was seeing about her that were concerning for the next 3 years. And then he asked her to marry him. So should he have done that? No. The red flags were all over the place, for God's sakes. That's exactly it. The red flags were there. He saw that she had emotional problems. She got depressed easily. She demanded things. So she was difficult. She was pretty good with the kids. Everybody seemed to say she was pretty good, with the children. She seemed to really love those children. Why? Maybe because it made her important. I don't know. But she loved those kids. And so she was good to them while they were there in Ireland, but they were having the issues, and yet he went ahead and married her. Now, Christophe, you said he didn't then after he gets married to her, and he does not give her the right to adopt them. And I have big issues with this. Now, her defense will say he was an abusive man and he held that adoption thing over her head. If you don't do this and you don't do that, then you can't adopt the kids. If you don't act right, you won't be able to adopt the kids. That's what they said. And it's a reasonable thing to assume because it is a hell of a thing to hold over somebody's head, that you're never going to really be the mother of these children legally unless you do everything I say. So that's one of the things when I was watching the things, I'm like, the documentaries and stuff, I'm like, that is concerning. And I don't know that that's what he was doing because I have come to the conclusion he is not as controlling as she claims. However, if he didn't think she was good enough to adopt his children, to legally become their mother, he should never have married her because he did make her their mother. And it's not right that he just strings her along and strings his children along for his own personal needs, whatever the heck they were. He didn't want to be alone. He wanted sex. I don't know what his issues were. But he strung along his children and her for 7 years. And at the end of the 7 years, this is right before the murder goes down, he decides she's a problem, that he's had enough of her. And he wants to bolt back to Ireland. He tells his sister he wants to come back to Ireland with the kids and without her. So what he's saying is he is now going to take away his children's mother. Just leave the mom there, grab the kids, go off to Ireland, and they're never going to see their mother again. Now, even if mommy is a problem, mommy has issues. Mommy maybe does some things that are questionable. That is their mother. And you're telling your kids you're never going to see her again. And I can understand why he might be pissed at her. He might be thinking, the woman's a nut job. I don't trust her. I don't want her around my kids anymore. I can see where he doesn't care that she loses her children. But I will say this. They are, at this point, her children. I don't give a crap about the legal stuff. Or that she's not bio mom. She raised them for 7 years. She is their mother. And he gave her that job, that position. And he married her, which even gives it more of a respectability and more saying, hey, I'm marrying her. She's my wife. Therefore, she's your mother. And these children saw her as their mother. And he was willing to just pick up his kids in the middle of the night, essentially, and just fly off to Ireland and leave their mother there. And how is he going to explain that to her, to the kids? I have issues with that. So I have some problems with his decision-making. And my problem is that I think he made his decisions based on his needs more than his kids' needs. So he's not an angel. He said, I don't think he's a bad guy. And I don't think I'm going to get into what she says he did. I don't think he did those things. I think he's just a little bit on the me selfish side of I have needs. I'll check some of your comments. I'm going to go into what she said about him as we approach the date of the death of Jason. Okay, he tried to leave her, but she kept threatening to kill herself and didn't really be responsible for that. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Again, when that happens, how often it happened, regardless. The one thing he never did was go get help. I don't hear anything from anybody. Now she went to a psychiatric institute when she was with his fiance and when she was living back in the US before she went over to Ireland. But if you've got, first of all, you've got a whack job like this, again, they shouldn't be around your kids. If they have to commit, if they're going to kick themselves off, if they're going to kill themselves, well, you still can't be around my kids. It would be dangerous to have her around the kids. And I'm going to get into the issue of Munchausen syndrome and Munchausen syndrome by proxy. He could get her to, he had money. She should have been in therapy. They should have been in therapy. They should have been in marital counseling. They should have been in whatever kind of therapy they needed. But he did not do that. He kept, all these things kept going between them. She complained about this and he complained about that. And was she manipulative? Yeah. But on the other hand, what was he doing? So it's a little bit of a hazy area, although I'm going to say I do lean on Lindsay Clancy comes to mind. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, Lindsay Clancy is an interesting issue in that too. And when you depending on what, as I'll get into Munchausen syndrome by proxy in a minute, because one of the things that he was concerned about was, it seemed like he was more concerned about her again than the children, which bothers me. Oh, they are free now. Yes, they are out. Yes, they are. Molly and her dad, Tom. Yes, they're both out. Let's see. I want to look at some of their comments. This is my brother hired an unattractive older secretary because he didn't want his wife ever to be worried. That's a great choice. He should have hired a 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 70-year-old au pair, a nanny that would have been their grandma type, because a grandma type, like my son, when we adopted him out of foster care, he was 5 years old and he lived in the same foster home for 5 years, which, well, actually, no, he lived there for 4 years. He went to a pre-adopt home and they changed their mind after a year and sent him back. It's a horrible story. Anyway, but the reason it worked so well was because his foster parents were in their 70s. So he considered them like mom and pop-up, not parents, like they were like grandparents. So when we came along and they liked us, my husband and me, they liked us. And they said, okay, you could be good parents to him. They thought that they should let him get a life with a family since they were, quote, elderly. Now I look at them and they're not so elderly anymore. But anyway, we kept them on as grandparents. And so after we adopted our son, we kept driving back to that state, visiting with them and having birthday parties and stuff. We kept them on as grandparents so that he wouldn't lose them and wouldn't lose everybody around that he has ever grown up with. And today in his 40s, he sometimes goes back to that state and he visits with some of the foster kids that he grew up with. And that's really neat. So we try to keep that little, that family stuff going. But because they were the grandparent, it was easier than if they had been in their 30s like us at the time. It would have been weird. It's like they'd be like parents for him for 5 years and then some other people just roll in and snatch him up. That's not right. So I think you should have gotten somebody older to watch. If they're going to live, especially if they're going to live 24/7 in his house, somebody should be more of a grandmother type, or he should watch the kids himself and just have somebody come in during the day for 8 hours and then go away, but not live with him as a mother figure. So that just bothered me a lot. I don't know that what's a little, what I'm looking for. I don't know that he didn't want to be a dad. I think he did. I just think that, sometimes people cannot see the same thing with women who say, bring that guy into their house. I got, and it's like, why are you bringing that? He's straight out of prison, dude. Guy's coming out of prison. You got a teenage daughter in your house. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the need to not be alone, people don't handle it well. And they obsess on their own needs because they feel them so strongly, hormonally, and just the tragedy of life. He lost his wife, so now he just feels this big gaping hole, and he thinks she can fill it. And the children sort of take second place, to that. She never wanted to have kids with him, though. That's a real confusing thing, and I'm not sure what that actually means. Yeah, so. Yeah, Yeah, the children, I want to point this out too. Children really paid the price. The children paid the price. I mean, the first marriage was fine and they just lost their mom, and that was just unfortunate. But his choice of bringing her into their lives was that was something that shouldn't have happened, because he did not choose wisely. And that turned into a disaster. Now they've lost their father and their mommy, because even though, as you'll see, I think she does exhibit psychopathy, it was still their mother. And now they've lost her too. And now they're over in Ireland, and theoretically they're doing well with their aunt and uncle and have grown up. And so I will get into that. But yeah, it's very sad. So anyway, let me go on. So now their marriage is kind of sinking downhill. It is. And let me show you a couple of things that show that the marriage is now, at the last year or so of the marriage, things are like really sketchy. They've gotten to the point where, hold on, I got to click on this to see what that is. Oh, now he's said, he's trying to get divorce information. I've been married to Molly for over a year now. So now that's 4 years into the relationship. We've lived here just over a year. Is it possible to structure this that if I ever get a divorce, not planning to? Isn't that interesting? He even says that. That the right to keep the children is with me over Molly. So he's saying right here that should they ever get divorced, he should have the rights to the children and not her. And again, people say, well, they weren't her kids. They are her kids. They are. At this point in time, it is equal. I don't care that he had sex and brought them into the world with somebody else. She's raised them for 7 years. He's raised them for what, 9? Basically, they're equal in that the children view them as mom and dad. And the fact that he doesn't want to protect the children being able to see their mother is concerning to me. Because he could say, look, I might want to have physical custody, but I want to make sure that she also has, I don't want the kids to be kept away from her, because I don't want to hurt my children to that extent. I want them to be able to see their mother. But he was planning on, when he finally decided he was going to run off to Ireland with him, he was absolutely Xing her out of their lives. So that's a little concerning, but he was having issues with her. He said things like this. Is there anything I can do to make you happy? I've done everything, and still you hate yourself, hit yourself, cry in the shower, vomit, curse, shout at me. I feel so inadequate, Mols. I've given you everything in my life, including my and my kids' hearts. And I know you love us so much, but you're still, in the last few days, not only had done all of the above. Even vacation Jason isn't enough anymore. I don't know what to do. Maybe get psychological help for her. I don't see that they should be in marriage counseling and getting psychological help. They shouldn't be trying to do this on their own, because she's supposedly just falling apart. And he says, I think you still love us, but you're a mess, and it's driving me insane. And then he goes to the doctor, and he's like, he's having issues now. He's feeling faint and dizzy. He's feeling stressed and angry for no reason. No reason, dude. Your marriage is in the toilet. Your wife is a mess, and you think you don't have a reason to be like tense? I don't know what his issue is, why he has trouble stepping up to the plate, essentially. Maybe he's wimpy in that sense. He gave her everything, because, again, I think he wants to keep her. And yet he finally gets to a point where keeping her he just wants to get away from her. Now, before this happens, she also is checking in with a divorce lawyer, because she's like, hey, what happens if we get divorced? He wouldn't let me adopt the kids. Now she's getting more and more pissed because he won't let her she can't adopt the kids. And I think she should have been allowed to do that. If you're going to marry her, she should have been able to adopt the kids right away. And she shouldn't have married him without that rule, that the adoption would go straight through. And then they were still married, and a couple more years goes by, and still she can't adopt the kids. So she's got no rights in this marriage at all to the children she raised. I sympathize with her in that. I think she's got every right to be angry, and she was. And so now she's checking out, what do I do if he dumps me? Do I just lose my kids and never see them again? Now, so she talked to some people, and they said, and she's now claiming, of course, she's claiming that he's abusive, and she's telling people that he's abusive. She's starting to drop stuff around town. Now, she sets up, she gets little recorders and she sticks them in different places in the house, under a table, at the bed, all over the house, and they're voice activated. So she's trying to catch him in enough things where she could use this in a court of law. Now you can call that sneaky and sleazy, but a lot of lawyers will say that was the right thing to do, because when you get to a court of law, your word against his, the judge never knows who's telling the truth or not. So she's doing that. And she's got, this is one that's shown on, I think, all of them. So he says, I said I'd like to have dinner with my family. I'm talking to you. I shouldn't have to say it over and over again. See, there you go again. I'm talking to you and you're still going on, talking about something else. And then the kids start screaming, stop fighting. He comes across nasty. But she's also probably gaslighting him to an extent to get him to be nasty, because she's trying to get evidence against him so she can use it in a court of law. They only used that one. Now, there are other people say, well, there's no other tapes. Yeah, there were. And a lot of them were just like that one. But I don't know. I think there's the only one shown in court or heard in court. So nothing got to the point. This is the worst of it. So he's nasty, he's angry, and he's scary. He's scary, but he's not like, I'm going to kill you, or you don't hear him punching her, because I'm sure if she was being punched and strangled, I'm sure those would be in court. So she's trying to tell everybody she's being abused. She never goes to the police with any damage, but she's starting to leak out information about, how he's doing these things to her. And by the way, she has told a lot of tales in her lifetime. So she is a pathological liar. There's no question about that. She claims that, she was like an Olympic swimmer, which she wasn't. She claims she worked for Montessori school, which she didn't. She claims she had a sister who died of cancer, which she didn't. I mean, and one of the things people were surprised about, like at the wedding, she had said something like she knew Mags, and she wasn't, she knew Mags, and that's why she came over to Ireland to help out with the kids. And they're like, what? She didn't know Mags. Well, I could give her a break on that one, because maybe she didn't want to admit she was an au pair, and married the widower. You know what I mean? Okay, maybe that was just embarrassing. I give her a break on that. But the fake sister, that's a problem. The things that she said she did that she never did, maybe she's trying to build herself up. You could kind of give her a little bit of a break, but not so much. You know what I mean? So she is a person who lies for attention. That is Munchausen syndrome. What is Munchausen syndrome? Which I say over and over again. Munchausen syndrome is the behavior of a female psychopath. So she struggles to get attention, and she'll do whatever she can to get that attention, which can be crawling into bed and saying she wants to kill herself, and she never actually gets around to doing it. It can be being depressed all the time, so people feel sorry for her. So a lot of what she's doing that's driving him nuts is getting attention. And so her lying is the same thing. She lies a lot in order to get attention from people. So now what she was doing, now that she thinks her husband may be dumping her, she does love the attention she gets from the kids and being a mother. This is a thing for her. And she actually does cry, legitimately cries. And she says this when they were being taken away from her, which I thought was actually, she said, yes, I was their mother. And then she says, I was the mother to Jack and Sarah that existed in another lifetime. So she's recognized now she's no longer considered their mother, and they don't consider her their mother anymore, and they hate her. So she's looking back and saying that period of time it was their mother, which was true. And she cried. And she cries a lot when she talks about the kids. She doesn't cry about him, but she does cry about the kids. So the kids gave her some feeling of worth and usefulness and pride. So I think she did like marrying him because he was wealthy enough, and they got this beautiful house in North Carolina, a really big place. And the kids, she was running around the neighborhood saying, oh, I'm the mother to these kids. And she claimed she was, birth mother of her, which she wasn't, but they look so similar. I guess she wanted people to think that, but she is a pathological liar. And so that is a sign of psychopathy. So at this point in time, she was setting him up to be able to get the kids in the divorce. He was trying to make sure she didn't. The kids were left out of the whole thing, and that was really sad. What would have been more beneficial to both of them would be go to marriage counseling and get legal help to make sure that both of them had opportunity to see the children, unless she becomes a danger to the children. But at this point in time, he was never thinking of her as a danger to the children. Now, there's some things that came out later where the kids, what happened with the kids after this incident happened is that they were brought in and they were, they said these things about mom and dad. Sarah, 8 years old, this is right after the death of Jason. She says, he gets very angry at my mom for leaving a light on. And then he says he would physically and verbally hurt my mom. And everybody says, what kid of that 10 years old says physically and verbally hurt? Somebody's coaching that kid. Oh, probably mom. He says punching, hitting, pushing. And the brick that was on the side of the table, he says, we were going to paint a brick, and that's why it was in there. So they brought it in because it was going to rain. So then she set it on her nightstand because they were going to paint it, and they didn't want it to get wet. And then and then her sister, the little girl supposedly had a nightmare that night, and that's why Molly got out of bed, and that's why Jason got mad. It was because Molly went to help the little girl with the nightmare, and now he's asking, now your sister had a nightmare. How do you know that? And he says, my mom told me. And then she said, on another question, my mom told me. So the question was, this is one of the horrific things that happened in this crime. After he was killed in the house, being bludgeoned with a baseball bat and that big brick thing, and Molly and her dad said it was self-defense. Hold on, I hear a dog barking, so I have to I have to send a note to my daughter. Dog outside barking. I don't have a dog, but they have a dog, and they try to keep the dogs in during my live shows. But I heard, so hopefully they'll take the dog back in before it keeps on. So she and her dad, the claim is that he was strangling her, and that's how, I'll go into the whole murder thing in a second, or I shouldn't call it murder. I should just call it killing, because I will get into my determination of what happened. It was second-degree murder is what they got charged with, and then down to manslaughter. But I have a different opinion. So she and her dad were home with him, and the kids were there. The little girl supposedly had a nightmare, and she went and helped out. And then when she got back, he got angry and started attacking her and started choking her, and she screamed, and her dad came running up with a baseball bat that he had brought to give to the little boy. And then he came in and then tried to get the guy off his daughter, bang, 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 bang. And and then he died. And so they brought in the little kids afterwards to be interviewed properly by the proper people. But what bugs me is they were still in custody of Molly before they were brought in. So I don't understand this. A man is killed in his home in a very brutal way that may be self-defense or may not be self-defense. And at that point, they do not know. She should be in custody. Her dad should be in custody. The children should be not in custody of anybody except the state, so that nobody can coach them as to what to say happened in that house that night. But apparently that is not what happened. So these kids came in and they asked them a day later what happened, and they gave these speeches. And I have issues about that. But I thought, well, maybe it's true exactly is what they have seen their father be abusive toward the mother. And now, they're not lying. Well, it turns out later on when they got back to Ireland, they recanted their stories. And this is still when they were quite small. This is like a few months later. And then people say, well, maybe the auntie, maybe she's now coaching them, right? So how do we know what they're recanting is true or not? Because the aunt said this, which I thought was interesting. Where is it? Hold on a second. Got to find the right picture. Oh, here we go. She said, I would have done anything I needed to get justice for Jason. And that's why a lot of people are suspicious that she was coaching the kids when they got back so they'd recant. So She didn't want them to say Daddy did mean things to Mommy, and that's why there was a self-defense issue, because he was choking Mommy, and so then they recanted. So there was a lot of questions about which one was actually correct. But the real question is, was he a controlling person? Well, he was about the adoption and what he needed over what the kids needed. But was he somebody who had a sexual thing where he liked to choke and smother women and all that kind of stuff? Is that what's going on? She's telling people that's what's going on. But she's telling people. There's never been any proof of it. So the problem we have here is that just because she tells people that doesn't make it true. And so this is one thing a person who is psychopathic will do, is they will drop hints to people along the way. So by the time the issue comes up, they go, well, yeah, she was telling me she was being abused. And there's supposedly some issue of about her causing like bruising to herself. So she say, oh, he did this to me last night, and show a bruise. And for Munchausen syndrome people, who are then female psychopaths who want attention, they will hurt themselves in order to say, he hit me, or I was raped, or I was, attacked, whatever. They will say that. They will hurt them. They will run into cabinets. They will slam their heads into walls. They will damage themselves in order to claim somebody else did it to them. And it seems like she might have done some of that. So their marriage was definitely in trouble. He should have gotten her to help, because he'd known this forever, and they should have got marriage counseling, legal counseling, everything else, but it doesn't seem like it happened. But what happened instead was that he decided he'd had enough, and he was going to bolt and go to Ireland, because his children were Irish citizens and she didn't have any legal rights over them. He would just get up and the next day take off, and she would just lose. He'd win, she'd lose, he'd be out of there. So that, I think, is the catalyst for what happened to him as far as the incident of him getting killed. So I'll check some of your comments, and I'll go to my motive on that and how it went down, how exactly I think it went down. Let's see. Felicity says this was an interesting point. They wanted to call him out for uncontrolled anger. We didn't see how bad the anger was unless the audio recordings were as bad as it got. He was seeking help. That's the worst audio recording they could come up with. It was. I mean, it would make me uncomfortable if he were yelling that at me in my house, because I mean, it's enraged and it's kind of scary sounding. But if that's the best they could come up with, I'm pretty sure if he were beating her and punching her and strangling her, she would have turned those things over, to the defense for sure. And that didn't happen. That did not happen. Good point, Barbara. One thing that struck out to me is a story of Molly saying she gave birth to a girl in a room full of people who knew the truth. Yeah, she was at a Bible study, and she claimed that she actually described how she gave birth to a child she didn't give birth to. And this, again, is a very common thing of Munchausen syndrome, because they don't see how other people see things. It's just all about them and them wanting to watch people's responses. They almost half the time don't care if you don't believe them. Her anger was also not well controlled. No, I shouldn't. Well, people who are psychopathic don't like losing. So that is a big issue. Avoidance of mental health, not to have a stigma applied to him. Well, I don't know, Christine, why he didn't want to get help. I mean, I don't know if that was the issue or not. Marital counseling, illegal, whatever, getting her to some help. By then he knew she'd been in a psychiatric institution before and was on a ton of meds. So I don't know. I don't know what the issue was. And we'll never know, because that was something he kept to himself, apparently. Somebody made a good choice. I'm glad to hear somebody make a good choice. Hard to know what preceded the recordings. That's also true, because she, like the documentaries, they can just edit. It's like, I won't show what I said before, which drove them completely over the edge. I'll just, clip it and I'll use that part. That's how you libel people. She provoked him to anger. That is a belief, yes. But you see, my problem with him is that drives me crazy is that his children were in the middle of this. He was keeping her on as mother to his children, allowing this to go on and on and on and on for 7 years. He knew she had problems. He should have gotten her out of there really quickly. And he didn't. And so he made a horrible choice. And I think it was selfish. And so I'm sorry to the sis. I may have been a nice guy in every other way, but he put his needs above his children. And that was a disaster, absolute disaster. Oh, thank you, Loretta. Wow. Thank you very much. Late to the party today because I'm always working. One does have to do that. But love the show and can't let the chance pass to do a super chat, as it's usually not on. No, it isn't usually on. This is true. I don't do that's only on open lives. But I thank you very much, Loretta. It's very sweet of you. And if anybody else has given me something, I didn't see it go by. That's I don't have a person helping me. So if you do, thank you. I might see it later. Oh, okay. Okay. I'm going to get to this now. Self-defense is when you stop when the person is no longer a threat. They didn't. Okay. This is where I think the whole story is not true. Okay. This is the part you've all been waiting for. And somebody's like, well, I had to get through all this to get to this point. Yes, you did. Because I wanted to set up the dynamics between the two of them and what was happening. Okay. So here we are. Now we come down to, she knows he's about to leave with the kids. She knows she has zero rights. She's going to lose the kids. She's not going to be allowed to see them anymore. And I'm sure she's more concerned about her own feelings than the kids' feelings and everything else that goes with it. Her dad supposedly cancels something that he's got going, and he comes to North Carolina, and let me see where these people are. Okay, so that's the sis of Jason, and this is Molly, and that's her dad, Tom. And by the way, just in case you don't know, Tom has had an illustrious career, which is very important, in my opinion. He has an illustrious career in the FBI. Yes, he's been in the FBI. He's an attorney. He's been in there, done criminal cases, all kinds of stuff in the FBI. And so he's retired from the FBI. Now, there's people who believe that she called Daddy and said, I want to get rid of hubby. You come up here and help me out. Get out of here, folks. I mean, this guy has his issues, but he's not that stupid. So it's not like he said, sure, hon, what would you like me to bring? Bring a baseball bat. Okay. So he gets a baseball bat and he drives with his wife to her home and they spend the day together and everything's fine. They're down in the basement guest room, and him and the wife, and they're in bed. And then she claims that the daughter had a dream. So she got up and then she got back and Jason was all pissed off and started attacking her, and he starts choking her, and he chokes her, and then he takes her hands off it, and she screams, and Daddy down below hears this thump, 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 and he thinks he should go see what's going on. So he grabs the baseball bat, which oddly makes no sense to me, because now one of the things he said somewhere along the way was he brought the baseball bat and gave it to his grandson as a present. Well, then why does he have it in the bedroom with him? If he gave it to him, shouldn't it be in the grandson's bedroom? That don't make sense. But anyway, he grabs the baseball bat and he says to his wife, I'm going to go check that out. And she's like, whatever. Okay, go ahead. And so he goes upstairs. Okay. And just so you know what the wife issue is, says, here's the wife. She doesn't respond in any way. She says, during the middle of the night, I woke up. The dogs were barking. I could hear Molly screaming upstairs and some thumping. My husband said he was going to go up to them to calm them down, and he was going to call the police. He told me to stay there. I heard more screams and more thumpings. And then she went back to sleep. She's a caring woman. Yeah, she seemed to be a bit of a piece of work herself. So anyway, so maybe that apple didn't fall too far from a narcissistic tree. But anyway, Daddy gets the bat, supposedly, goes upstairs and opens up the door and sees that Jason is choking his daughter. And then he's like, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her. And so then he changes and he puts an arm bar across her and she's going, and she's passing out. And so he hits him with a baseball bat. And then Jason gets hit with a baseball bat, but he tries to drag Molly into the bathroom, you see. And he's afraid if the door closes to the bathroom, and then he'll kill Molly in the bathroom. So he manages to bar the bathroom door from closing and hits him some more. And then he gets out of the bathroom, and then they struggle for the baseball bat. And he gets the baseball, and so he throws Tom onto the ground because, he's a big dude. I mean, Jason's a big dude, a big, strong, big guy. And he's, retirement age, he's 70, right? Anyway, he's not so big. So anyway, he throws him across the floor, but somehow he managed to jump up. And then after fighting for the baseball bat, he gets a hold of it and he smacks him over the head. And he says he hits him until he's no longer a threat, because that's what he learned in law enforcement, is you just make sure that he can't get back up again. So until he's no longer a threat, you keep beating him. That's his statement. So, okay. Now let's look at this statement. So we have some interesting little things here. He says, I heard arguing and thumping going on the floor above me. And he's got Molly by the throat like this. Well, as many people say, damn, her throat is very large. That's a weird description, but anyway. And then here's Molly saying, he choked me. And Jason got the baseball bat. In other words, Jason got the baseball bat away from her dad. And so she hit him on the head. And with the brick on my nightstand, that big brick on the nightstand. And this is interesting here. On Tom's side of it, the detectives are saying, I see Tom attempting to control the narrative. Why? Because he's an FBI dude. He knows he needs to control the narrative. Okay, and they check them out for injuries. They got none. They don't have hardly a mark on them. She supposedly has this tiny little mark on, is this a picture of that? Yeah. Up on her neck. Oh, I can't even see it here. Right under her ears, it's a tiny scratch. But you notice that she's got the nice little fragile little bracelet on her, and she's got a little blood on her forehead. That's just from touching with her hand. So Jason gets his head bashed in at least 10 times, at least, and it's so bashed in that there's a big hole in his head and brains are falling out, and it's horrible. Blood is everywhere. I mean, there's blood in 4 different, like the bedroom, the hallway, it's all over the place. It's on the doors, it's on the walls. There's some evidence that some of his blood is low down, so that he had to be on his knees when he was being hit, or on, crawling on the floor when he's being hit. Nothing looks like self-defense here. This looks like overkill. And so I started by thinking, maybe when he saw Jason choking his daughter and she was, screaming and panicking, maybe he got very angry, Daddy, and he got that bat, and maybe the bat was never in the downstairs. Maybe the bat was actually in her room or outside, whoever. But anyway, he's so angry that at that point he just starts beating Jason to death and kills Jason. And the daughter's like, Daddy's trying to save my life. Maybe Daddy lost his temper and went into a massive rage. And she says the reason she picked up this rock that she just happens to have sitting on her bedstand and smashed his brains in, is because she was going to hurt her daddy. Now, during the whole thing here, they're being interrogated. He never saw her pick up that brick, that big thing, and smash him in the head. He doesn't even talk about that. Like he didn't know that she was even going to say that. When the EMS got there, they said his body seemed cold. Like they didn't call right away. And that over the phone when they were supposed to be doing CPR, it didn't sound like they were actually doing CPR. It sounded fake. So the belief is that he was dead for an hour or whatever, when they made the phone call. So something happened during that hour. They think they were getting their story straight. But yet, he didn't seem to know anything about the brick thing, which is interesting. So the question here comes down to, there's three possible, well, let me tell you the different possibilities. One is it was self-defense, that Jason was actually choking her. First of all, he's naked when they found him. So he could have told her, by the way, let's be fair. She found out he was taking the kids. And so he could have said, yes, I am taking the kids. I'm going to Ireland tomorrow. I'm done with you. You're psycho, and I'm taking the kids. And you're never going to see them again. That would send her into a rage. Now, she could be screaming at him, and he could be angry with her. He could have reached out and choked her. In theory, like, I've had enough of you. He could have done that. Or she could be screaming and when Daddy comes up, she says he choked me, and Daddy just goes crazy. But Daddy didn't really see Jason choking her. But you wonder about the whole story here, about Jason choking her and pulling her into the bathroom and all that kind of stuff. So what the heck? All right. What do I think? And I'm going to give you my theory, and then you can tell me what you think about my theory. I do not see this, that she did not call up Daddy and say, come up here and help me kill Jason. That's ridiculous. He's smart enough to know this is a stupid idea. Why is it a stupid idea? One, you have to get away with it. That's the first thing. And you don't want to end up in prison the rest of your life. Two, it's not going to get the kids back. Even if the concept is, if he's dead, maybe I'll get the kids. But there was his sister actually he was given custody of the sister if anything happened to him. And she probably knew that. And on top of that, once you're involved in the death of a person, even if it's the questionable self-defense, the judge is not likely to give you the kids. So he's going to know that. He's going to say, that is too risky. You're probably not going to get the kids anyway. So why do you want to go to prison? I don't want to go to prison with you, and I don't want you going to prison. So that they would have planned this ahead of time. He came up there specifically to help her murder Jason. To me, is stupid. That doesn't make any sense. So if that's not true, then what is true? Because it does seem she wanted him there. Now, why did he show up there? Well, I think she knew he was leaving her. And I think she was ready to stage for herself, not because that she was going to get her revenge. We all know that one of the most dangerous times for any partner is when they tell the other partner they're leaving. And when they're taking their kids as well. That's a really dangerous time, especially when you're dealing with a psychopath. For her, losing like that is not acceptable. She was going to lose her husband. She's going to lose the home. She's going to lose the kids. She's going to lose everything. Well, she might get some money out of it. That's true. And I do think if she killed him, she'd get a little bit that insurance money. But I don't think that was the main reason she wanted him, would do this kind of thing. I think she did this because this was her revenge on him. This would get her attention, even if that attention took her to court and to prison. It was worth doing. And I think her idea was that she brings in her brick, right? I think she brought I wouldn't be surprised she brought the baseball bat in the room too. And he wasn't drunk. They claimed he was drunk. He had a little alcohol in his system, but not a lot. He has some kind of barbiturate or something in his system too, which maybe he was a little drowsy. But maybe he's just going to sleep. And she just picked up that, hit him right in the head on the bed, and didn't hit him hard enough so he manages to not die right there. So he gets out of the bed, he's staggering around, and she is now picking up the baseball bat and whacking and whacking and whacking him. And I don't know when Daddy shows up, but my belief is Daddy did not wield the baseball bat or the brick. I think she did it herself. I think she hit him, and he was staggering around enough that she could hit him more than once and whack him, whack him, whack him, until he went down to the ground. Then I don't know if she picked up the brick again and hit him again. At that point, if he was still like crawling around and it was clearly almost dying, did Dad then pick up the saying, we can't have him live, and then whacked him one more time? Maybe. But I think she is the one that premeditatedly planned to kill Jason that night and get sympathy for it. Have her parents feel sad for her because, oh my God, and she's going to make up her story that he attacked me and therefore I did this. just that he never saw anything. She will probably say, oh, yeah, he was choking me in the bed and I just got him. And so daddy, who's always protected his little girl because he doesn't seem to understand, or maybe he's one of them, that his daughter is probably psychopathic and Munchausen syndrome. So he just goes along with that program, and he wants to protect her. So once that Jason is on the floor, pretty much dead, and he's like, what are we going to do? I think he takes that time. I think most likely she took a shower. I think he probably told her, go in there, get the blood off of you, because she had to have it all over clothes. Because if she's the one wielding the bat, both of them there's blood spatter everywhere, but not on them. Why not? So I think there's not any on him, because he didn't do much of the beating. I think it was on her. And I think he told her, go in there, take a shower, get rid of well, I don't know what they do with the clothes or whatever, but go take a shower, get all that blood off of you so it doesn't look like you killed him. And then whether he figured out he should dry the shower so it doesn't look too wet, like she just took a shower. Now, sometimes that's an issue. It's like she could have taken a shower before she went to bed and it could still be damp. But who knows how, but they had time to work with, and who knows how he's smart enough to figure out how to deal with that. And then at that point, it's done. Whether they touched him a little bit and she put a little bit of blood on her head. He's got one little couple spatters on his shirt, like a couple. So they were there, but he's taking the blame to save his daughter. That's what I think. And when they got in there to do he didn't mention the brick thing. I don't know that he ever saw the brick, because probably she did that first. And then when he came in, she's finished with I think she was using the baseball bat. And whether she picked up the brick and hit him again, or I don't even know if he paid attention to it. So that's maybe why he never said anything about it. Just actually didn't see it, and she did. And she blew it when she mentioned that she picked that up, because I think he was trying to make her totally not. She never did anything. And she was trying to say, oh, I was trying to save my dad. Maybe to making him look innocent, so it would look like self-defense. That's clearly not self-defense. I mean, there's the amount of damage he had, as you just pointed out here. At a certain point, it's no longer self-defense. When he cannot fight back, it's not self-defense anymore. And there's no proof that he ever attacked her at all. She had the motive. I believe she was the one that basically, if not completely, killed Jason. So I think should have been murder one, premeditated murder. And I'll point out something else before I go to your comment on some of this. She was starting to exhibit anger toward the children and doing things with the children in the very end that was concerning. And that to me means she might be moving into the Munchausen syndrome by proxy part, where you hurt the children, do things to the children to get attention. So would she have killed the children? Well, as long as she thought she could get the children so she could have them as her prizes, I don't think she would hurt them. But on the other hand, maybe at some point, if she had gotten control of them all on her own, maybe at some point she would have had them become the targets, because, if you're not getting enough attention, you've got to ramp it up one more. Would she use them? So I think she was already doing Munchausen syndrome by proxy kind of things. There's some evidence that she was doing that. And so she was a danger to those children. And so I don't have a problem if Jason realized that the children were in danger, but he spent 7 years setting up this scenario, which just got worse and worse by the year. And he didn't deal with it when he should have dealt with it, which would be, first of all, not to hire her. Secondly, to get her out of there when he realized she was nuts, and third, once he got to the point where he wasn't willing to have her adopt him, he should never have married her. And he shouldn't have. That was like something, don't piss off a psychopath that bad too. It's not good. And then when he finally tries to free himself and the children, he's dealing with somebody who is willing to do anything so that he doesn't win. So let me go to some of your comments now. Okay. Trying to get to it. So many comments. And when you have an open live, there's a lot more comments than a regular live. Sarah says snort. I'm not sure what that was in relation to. We'll have to find that out. Yes, Felicity. I want to know what happened to the recorder in the bedroom. Was it found removed by her long or shortly after the killing, before the killing? Well, I never heard anything about the supposed recorder in the bedroom. But if it wasn't, if he was choking her, if she had it working and he was choking her and she was screaming, stop choking me, I'm sure that would have been at the trial. So my guess is there wasn't any of that on there at all. So she was going to make sure that thing disappeared. I don't know what happened to all of the other recordings. I don't know. But the only one they came up with was the one over dinner. And if that's the best they had, yeah, that shows that he probably didn't do the things she said. Yeah, that's the ones I showed. His name Keith Magnan and Tracy Corbett. Yes, I showed those. I mean, maybe you're here. Didn't you see that? I showed you pictures of those books. They are right here. Hold on a second. There they are. That's the one by the ex-fiance, and this is the one by the sister-in-law, Jason's sister. And I found that's where I got so much useful information about the actual behavior of Molly. And it was believable too, especially this guy who didn't even use her real name, but it was clear it was her, and it was written way before this incident. So there was no way he thought she was going off to Ireland, but that was it, and he knew nothing. He wrote it way back then. So there was definite truth in that, and I did buy most of what the sister said. I do believe she was a good portion. There's too much in there that made sense and didn't sound like fake stories. So I think she is telling the truth. Do I think she, put her brother in a bit of a better light? Yes, I did, but that's her brother. So that's what she's doing. I was looking for things that she would be making up a whole bunch of stories about Molly, but I actually did not find a lot of deception there. So I think she was telling actual things that happened that made total sense to me. Molly was scary. She was scary early on. And she was good with the kids. There's no question. She, in general, was good with the kids. The kids, when they were off in North Carolina, they were going to swimming. They were going to baseball. They were doing a lot of good things. She spent a lot of time with those kids, and she took them places. And she did a lot because they were like her toys, in a sense. That she loved having them, and so a lot of her mothering wasn't bad. It's just that as time went on and the tensions got worse and worse, then there were things that were questionable, that she was then behaving around the children in ways that I would stop wanting her to be around the children, shall we say. Till she didn't get her way. That's one of those things. Yeah, till you didn't get, and at a certain point, the problem with a lot of psychopaths, especially people who have Munchausen syndrome by proxy, I say have. They're just that's the chosen behavior. It's getting attention in that way. When you don't get enough attention, you have to ratchet it up, and you get angry when you don't get the attention, because that's the whole point of what you're doing. You want to manipulate people. You like lying to people. Even if they don't believe your lies, it's still fun to lie to them and watch their faces. So this is a way that you get this power and control over people where, you're not a normal person. You're not regular. You're able to do these things and get these things and make these people think this way or do this. And that's very exciting until it's not, until somebody calls you on it, So she was not good with Jack. This is what Jack says later on. And this is, again, I don't know. It's a little hard to determine. She definitely loved the little girl, because that little girl looked just like her. I think that was her little pet. And Jack maybe was a little older when she came in. So Jack was, and he's a boy. So they're always more trouble. So supposedly she wasn't as nice to Jack. And he tried to get her love and kind of fought to get more of her love. But he did say he loved her. And after the incident, the murder, and he was off in Ireland, he did actually send her a message, I love you, keep fighting. And he said, don't make it public. And then she made it public, supposedly, and that pissed him off. And I think he started realizing that she was way worse than he thought, because he did love her. He said he loved her. That was his mother. But, everybody, and then, again, when people say they aren't treated quite as well, I don't ever know quite what that means. Sometimes kids always view things differently. Like my parents. My parents went to my sister's skating and watched her skate. I went to my other sister's organ concert, and they didn't go to my karate stuff. Well, they just didn't like karate. Well, they didn't like me. They just weren't interested. And maybe they should have forced themselves, but they didn't. So I could feel bad. Oh, they don't like me as much. Does that make them bad parents? No, it doesn't. There are other things they did for me. So it's hard to tell. So I'm willing to say I don't know because I don't. But murder is usually a different issue. Murder, different issue. Oh, her next partner better watch out. Well, Amy, it's like a Sherry Papini who already got herself a boyfriend. I'm like, what is wrong with you, dude? I mean, Sherry Papini clearly faked her own kidnapping and assaults, and tortured her family and her kids and her husband and half all the community. And you want to be her boyfriend? Maybe just like living on the wild side. I don't know. Never trust a blonde. I think she was a fake blonde. I think she had more brown hair and she made it blonder. She got away with it. Yeah, I guess in the long run, you could say that. She only ended up like 4 years, I think. She got about 4 years for voluntary manslaughter. Because she was in there for second degree. She would have been in there for life pretty much. But when they knocked it down to voluntary manslaughter, then they only tacked on like 7 months or something of the sentence already done, and then she got out. So yeah, she's already out. So in her mind, she'll get over the child thing. She's already done that. She says I was their mommy, and that was just this period of time I was their mommy. But now she can go on, and she can lay in bed at night and chuckle how she won and Jason didn't. Yeah, pretty much everyone. Neighbors, friends, yeah, pretty much everyone. Because she was building up the story that, was going to make her, Jason be the bad guy, and she had to retaliate. Yeah. Liz, when people have certain mental problems, they can do a lot to push one's buttons. That's true, even if you're a calm person. Seems she was persistent with that. Yes, they know how to do that. That's how they get attention again. That's all attention, attention, attention. And they make you feel guilty. Like I'm doing everything I can. They're like, well, no, you're not. You don't do this right. And no matter what you do, one of the things she could also represent is borderline personality disorder, which basically is like a person who has a big hole, and no matter how much you do, it's still half empty. You can't ever make them happy. If you take them out to dinner, it's not a good enough restaurant. If you have sex with them, it's not good enough sex. If they buy your house, why didn't you buy the house next door? It's a better house. You can't win. And it's always the reason that you're doing these things to me and not giving me the better things is because you don't care about me that much. Right? Oh my God. Let's see. What are they doing today? They're grown up. They're grown up, and they seem like their aunt and uncle seem like they've done a good job. They were brought back to Ireland, big, huge family. Certainly they went through massive trauma. And then they went through trauma again when the next trial was supposed to happen, when they got the appeal. And then when they got out, there's more trauma. But they're grown up now. They seem pretty well put together, but they're gonna carry that trauma forever. But it does seem like Auntie did a pretty good job of bringing them back. There was when she was awarded custody right after the murder. I'll say that the murder, because that's what I think it was. And I think, interesting enough, she should have gotten murder one, and the father, who I don't think committed the actual murder, I think he should have gotten accessory after the fact. But if he's trying to say he was the one that wielded the bat, then he's put himself there. But this was let me see here if I got this. Okay. So here was let's see here. Okay, that's what she's trying. Okay, they said here they went to the judge and everything. And they said that Jason and his Mags, his first wife, would want their children to be raised in the land of their origin, and then where the culture, religion, and customs, and their extended family on both sides are prepared to nurture them in a manner. The children will be returning to Ireland. Okay, now I personally don't agree with that thinking. I think they should have gone to Ireland, definitely, to the aunt and uncle, definitely, because why? Because they had nobody to be with in the United States, because the only people they could be with, the mom was up on homicide charges. So the grandpa was too. The grandmother was a useless tool. She wasn't doing anything. She was worthless. So who are they going to stay with? So they had a big, huge family back in Ireland. So yes, they should go back to Ireland. I totally agree with that. What I don't agree with is this nonsensical stuff where a child has to, just because they were born someplace, that makes them somebody who has to grow up in a particular culture or religion. I think that's just crazy. As a matter of fact, they were pretty happy in the United States because when they got here, I forgot how old they were when they got here. Okay, so after 3 years there, 4 years, I'm trying to think. I think they were in the U.S. like at least 3 years. So they were now at an age where they said they loved the place, and they had trouble when they went back to Ireland. They missed their friends, they missed the sports, they missed everything about being in the U.S. because they were still Irish citizens, but they had become part of the U.S. That was their land. That's where they live now. And so if they had decent people on this side of the side of the pond, that were not part of people killing their father off and their psycho mother, then I think there would be no reason why they couldn't stay on, because I think babies don't have a place they have to be. I've always thought that was just so nonsensical. I've seen people do that with adoption, and I think that's so ludicrous. It's like, let's say, this is an issue, like I've seen people do this. Let's say they adopt a kid from India, and the child in India is Hindu. I mean, the parents of the child are dead, or whatever, or they were Hindu. So there's a baby there whose parents were Hindu. You bring the baby back to the United States as a baby, and you're Christians. You have no reason to raise the child as Hindu, because the child is growing up in the United States as a baby. The baby doesn't have a religion. The baby doesn't have a culture. The baby doesn't have a nationality. It doesn't have anything. It's a baby. And once it comes to the United States, it becomes a U.S. citizen. It becomes an American. And if you're Christian, you raise your kid there, then they raise up with the culture of America and the culture of Christianity, and vice versa. There's some Indian people in India who are Hindu, adopt a kid from the United States who happens to have had a Christian parent. When they bring that baby to India, they're supposed to raise him as an American Christian. It's a baby. They should raise it as an Indian Hindu. That's you grow up wherever you grow up. That's what you're part of. So I always think that's silly when people think that just because somebody was something once, it doesn't make it what they are now. But should they have gone back to Ireland? Absolutely, because that's where they were going to get. That's where they were going to be cared for, and they were going to get family. And at that point, perhaps it was good to be separated from what happened in that whole area of North Carolina. That being in a whole different place might be good for them once they got over the loss of their friends and everything else. And they seem to have had so many people around them, so many warm-hearted people, that they eventually did call their aunt and uncle, mom and dad, and they grew up there, and they had their backs, and they had lots and lots of relatives, and now they're Irish. They were Irish citizens anyway, but now they're culturally Irish again, because that's where they grew up the rest of their lives, and that's perfectly fine. And I think it's great, but I just always think that this concept is a little silly. But thank God, yes, they're adults now, and I hope that everything that their relatives have done for them has helped them survive, because it's a horrible thing to have to live with. It is, because but I think they have realized that Molly, in spite of the fact they did love her as their mother for all those years, because she was their mother for all those years, they realize now that she's mentally defective. She got a personality disorder, and they don't have to feel that way about her anymore. And that's what they've done. They don't want to have anything to do with it, which they shouldn't, because she'll if they wanted to somehow rekindle some kind of relationship, she would just use them, and God knows what would occur. So I hope they do keep their distance. As she said, they're in her past. They're the children she was a mother to, and it needs to stay that way. So let's see. How would he know about her craziness? Because she acted that way around him. No, I mean, the point being that when he was with her, she exhibited all those. He had so many issues with her way before he married her. He should never have married her. Should have gotten her out of that. He should have gotten her away from those kids early on. But she was pretty, and maybe she was good in bed. I don't know. So. Good women like me can't find a good man, while psychos marry easily the next guy. Well, that's kind of because you're a very honest, open person. You're not playing them, because that's the other thing psychopaths know how to do, especially female ones. They're kind of clever with that, and they know what the guy wants, and they make sure that they attract him in that way. Where people who are more stable in their personalities and have more sense of self, we are who we are, and you either like it or you don't. And guess we don't play the game as well. I've been there and not done that. Oh, Lord. Let me see what else you have to say here. Karen Reed has Munchausen syndrome. Well, again, she exhibits it. It's not, you don't have it. If she's psychopathic, she's exhibiting Munchausen syndrome because she likes to be the victim. Yeah, it's just a behavior of psychopathy. That's what it is. So it's not like a disease that you have this, and you can't help it because you have Munchausen syndrome. No, it's a behavior, and the behavior is an attention-seeking methodology for mostly female psychopaths, rarely men, but because they have other ways of getting attention, but that's a very female methodology. Aren't you nice? Awesome time spent learning today. Well, I'm glad you got something out of it. That's why I do the shows. I mean, I found the case very interesting. But I was very frustrated by the documentaries, because although they were interesting to watch, I just couldn't get to the point where I understood what was going on with her or him. Who was the one who was doing the abuse? Was he really abusing her? And it was like this domestic. A lot of people think he's the domestic abuser, and he's just hidden it really well. And they're saying he's the evil one. And then other people say she's the evil one. But I don't see that there is any proof that he did any of the things she said. Outside of, I do think he held the adoption thing over her head, and that was a stupid, foolish thing to do. And I do think he put his needs over his kids. Those were his issues. Her issues was psychopathy. So, yeah. Patricia says, the FBI are not good at profiling. They use outdated methods. Well, I'm not fond of their methodology. This is true. So, yeah, what can I say? It's I'm not pleased with their methodology. I've been fighting that for years, and yeah. Oh, thank you, Sarah. Pat, you're the best teacher. I appreciate that. And I hope that's what people come here to do, is learn something and get something out of it that has some value. So, sarcasm. Wait a minute. Doug Carter. Oh, Lord. Don't get me started with him. Do domestic abusers often risk abusing their partner with their parents in the house, or would they keep the charade up instead? Well, I guess it depends how smart the parents are. Yeah. See, that's the tricky thing about Munchausen's and Munchausen by proxy is that they learn when to do things and when not to do things. And that's why they get away with so much of it. And a lot of times their behaviors are excused. I mean, Sherry Papini, she exhibited those behaviors with her parents and her sister. Sister? Did she have a sister? I know her parents knew she had issues. And then you're like, but then she marries Keith. Did he not see all this stuff? I mean, she didn't just wake up one day and say, although Dr. Das, I will put that video up next week, the one I did last week, which I'm holding off for a week. Dr. Das seems to think that people can have a bad hair day and have psychopathic traits for a day. That is not true, and it is never true, because if you're a psychopath, you're a psychopath. And you've been one since you've been a little kid. But you do learn how to adapt, and you do learn, depending on your level of intelligence and training you've got in your life, education, and all that, you're able to manipulate to a good extent to be, you can be successful. You can have a career. You can do things. You can, you learn what works, and you use those things, but you use them in a twisted way. So a lot of times people don't catch on to what you're actually doing until, if they're involved with that kind of person, it's too late. And then you're like, what's going on? Why am I stuck in this situation? And a lot of times, one thing you'll find when you're around a psychopath is that you just don't understand what's wrong. You can't figure it out. It's like drives you nuts, because it's like it doesn't make sense to you. And the reason is because they're playing you, and you can't figure it out, because that's not the way normal people would react. So you just get confused. Confusion is what you'll feel around a psychopath. Oh, aren't you nice? I'm your favorite person on YouTube. Oh, I love your agony ant solutions. Oh, thank you. In case you don't know what she's talking about, I have if you're still hanging around, and I have a second channel, which is it's Dear Profiler Pat. So like this one, Dear Profile Pat, question: am I a bad grandparent if I'm not excited to see my grandkids? So yes, I have this channel. The link will be below. So yeah, it's a second channel, and it is an agony ant channel, and I answer people's questions, and you can send in questions about life and what should you do. And I love giving advice, even if you don't take it. I'm so psychopathic. Oh my God. No. So I think that shall be. I don't judge people. What are you talking about? I don't judge people. Are you talking about me? I'm a profiler. I judge people all the time, and sometimes I probably shouldn't, but I do, and but I try not to. So anyway, so I'm glad you're all here today. Thank you for being here. If you're new to the channel, again, do like and subscribe, and check if you want to be in the chat room on a normal basis. Yes, you would want to join Patreon on the link below, and become a part of our community. A lot of people here today were from our patrons, which is why I know your names and everything, obviously. And it makes for a friendlier, generally speaking, a friendlier live show. Although this was a great one, I will say that I had a couple what were, because I don't have anybody monitoring. What do you call those people that are supposed to help me stop all the haters and crazy people? I don't have anybody to do that. So I did have a couple shows where I was like, whoa, what are these people? They came rolling in, and I had to block people, and sometimes they got a little. But today I thought everybody was really cool. So that's nice. I mean, I appreciate when people act right, because that, it's much better. It's much better for everybody. So again, if you're new to the channel, please do like, subscribe, check the playlist, and check my other channel as well. And I shall see some of you again soon. And for the hangout this week, it'll probably be on a Wednesday, I think. I have a reason I have to do that. I had to change everything around this week because of this live show that I'm doing. But yeah, so join me on Wednesday, and I'll send you the link. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. Bye-bye.